When I speak of focusing on yourself, I am not speaking of the little self, the outer garment that you wear in this world of shadows. I am speaking of your true self, your wonderful human imagination, which is God in action within you. The eternal body of man is the imagination that is God himself, as Blake so beautifully stated. And it is this self upon which all of your attention must be placed if you wish to transform your world. Let me share with you a story from my own experience. Many years ago, a dear friend of mine desired a particular position in his company. There were many others competing for this same position, all of them with seemingly better qualifications. The world would have told him to focus on improving his resume, on working longer hours, on impressing his superiors. But I instructed him differently. I told him, focus not on the competition, or even on the outer actions you might take. Instead, focus on yourself, on your consciousness, on the feeling of already being in that position. I instructed him to create a scene in his imagination that would imply the fulfillment of his desire. Each night before sleep, he would imagine his superior congratulating him on his new position. He would feel the handshake, hear the words of congratulation, experience the joy and satisfaction of achievement. He persisted in this assumption until it felt natural to him. Within a month, against all outward odds, he was called into his superior's office and offered precisely the position he had imagined. Those who knew of the competition were shocked. They could not understand how he had been selected when others appeared more qualified on paper. But you who are here tonight know the secret. He had focused on himself, on changing his consciousness, and the outer world reshaped itself accordingly. You see, the great secret is this. Consciousness is the only reality. All that you perceive outside yourself is nothing more than the outpicturing of your states of consciousness. Change your consciousness and you change your world. This is the law from which there is no deviation. As within, so without. As above, so below. These are not mere poetic phrases, but exact descriptions of how this universe operates. Now, let me make this very clear. When I say focus on yourself, I am not advocating selfishness or narcissism as the world understands these terms. I am advocating the recognition of a principle that lies at the very foundation of life. The entire vast world that you see is an extension of yourself. There is nothing but yourself. Therefore, to change anything in your world, you must first change yourself, not through outer effort and struggle, but through a change in consciousness. This principle is taught throughout Scripture, though it is veiled in symbolism and metaphor. When the Bible says, seek ye first the kingdom of God, and all these things shall be added unto you, it is telling you to focus on yourself, on the divine within you. The kingdom is not some distant realm, but your own wonderful human imagination. And when you focus there first, all things, all the outer circumstances and conditions of your life will be added unto you. Consider the lilies of the field. They do not toil or spin, yet Solomon in all his glory was not arrayed as beautifully as they are. What is the secret of the lily? It does not focus on becoming, it simply is. It fulfills its own nature perfectly without effort, without strain, without comparing itself to other lilies or to the roses nearby. It focuses on being itself, and in that perfect self-expression, it creates beauty that shocks all who behold it. You too must learn to focus on being rather than becoming. The world will tell you constantly about what you should become, about the gap between where you are and where you ought to be. But I tell you, there is no gap except in your consciousness. When you focus on yourself, on your imagination, the God within you, and assume the feeling of your wish fulfilled, you close that imaginary gap instantly. Let me share with you a principle that many find difficult to accept, but which is nevertheless true. You already are everything that you want to be. You already have everything that you want to have. You already are where you want to be. The entire vast universe exists within you now, complete and perfect. Your work is not to create your good. Your work is to become aware of what already is. This awareness, this change in consciousness, is achieved through the controlled use of your imagination. You must learn to focus your imagination on the feeling of your wish fulfilled. Feel the joy, the satisfaction, the fulfillment now, as if your desire were already an accomplished fact. For in the realm of consciousness, in the dimension of imagination, it is already done. And since consciousness is the only reality, if it is done there, it must in time be made manifest in what you call the outer world. Now, I know what many of you are thinking. You are thinking, but Neville, I have tried to imagine and nothing has happened. To this I say you have not really imagined. To imagine, in the sense that I use the term, means to enter into the feeling of your wish fulfilled and to persist in that feeling until it becomes your dominant state. Most people merely visualize their desires, seeing them as images outside themselves, but never enter into the feeling of already having what they desire. Remember, sensation precedes manifestation. If you would experience the fulfillment of your desires in the outer world, you must first experience the feeling of fulfillment in consciousness. The feeling is the secret. The feeling is the soul of the wish. The feeling is God in action. Now, why do I say that focusing on yourself in this manner will shock everyone? Because when you truly practice this principle, results will come into your life that the world cannot explain by its laws of cause and effect. Things will happen that appear to be coincidences, that seem miraculous to those who do not understand the law. Opportunities will appear as if from nowhere. People will be drawn to you without your seeking them out. Circumstances will arrange themselves to aid you without your planning. I recall a lady who came to me in despair. Her marriage was failing, her finances were in ruins, and her health was deteriorating. The world would have advised her to focus on fixing each of these problems through outer action, marriage counseling, financial planning, medical treatment. But I advised her to focus on herself, on her consciousness. I told her to assume the feeling that her life was perfect in every way. Each night before sleep, she would imagine herself lying beside her husband in perfect harmony. She would feel the peace, the security, the love between them. She would feel the relief of financial abundance, the sensation of perfect health. She focused entirely on these feelings, persisting until they became more real to her than the outer conditions of her life. Within 6 weeks, her husband, who had been cold and distant, began to change. Without any discussion between them, he became attentive and loving. A relative who had not contacted her in years suddenly called with news of an inheritance that solved her financial problems. And her health, which had been declining for months, began to improve without any change in her medical treatment. Everyone around her was shocked by these transformations. They could not understand how her circumstances had changed so dramatically without any visible action on her part. But she understood. She had focused on herself, on changing her consciousness, and her outer world had reshaped itself to match her new inner state. This is the law, and it never fails. As a man thinketh in his heart, so is he. This is not merely a poetic statement, but a precise description of how reality operates. Now, let me be crystal clear about something that many students of this law fail to grasp. The change in consciousness must precede the change in circumstances. You cannot wait to feel the joy of fulfillment until after your desire has manifested. You must feel that joy now, in spite of all evidence to the contrary. This is what the Bible means when it says to call those things which be not as though they were. This takes courage. It takes faith. It takes a willingness to be thought foolish by those who judge by appearances. But those who persist in this practice eventually shock everyone around them with the seemingly miraculous transformations that occur in their lives. I had a student once, a man who desired to be a successful author. He had written several books, but none had been published. The world would have told him to focus on improving his writing, on studying the market, on networking with publishers. But I told him to focus on himself, on his consciousness. I instructed him to sleep each night in the assumption that he was already a successful author. He created a scene in which he was autographing his books for eager readers. He felt the pen in his hand, heard the words of appreciation from his readers, experienced the satisfaction of achievement. He did this night after night, persisting until the feeling of being a successful author was more real to him than the feeling of being rejected. Within 2 months, he received a call from a publisher who who had rejected one of his manuscripts the year before. The publisher explained that he had been cleaning out his files and had come across the manuscript again. Something prompted him to read it a second time, and on this reading he found it compelling. He offered my student a contract on the spot. Within a year, the book was not only published but became a bestseller. The publisher was shocked. The critics were shocked. Even the author was shocked by the speed of his success. But he had applied the law, focusing on himself, on his consciousness, and the outer world had rearranged itself accordingly. You see, when you focus on yourself in this manner, you are not being selfish in the worldly sense. You are simply recognizing and applying the fundamental law of creation. All things are created first in consciousness. Therefore, by focusing on changing your consciousness, you are working at the causal level rather than the level of effects. This is true efficiency, true power. The Bible tells us in the beginning was the Word. What is this Word? It is not merely spoken language. The Word is the inner conversation, the feeling, the consciousness from which all things proceed. When you focus on changing this inner word, this inner conversation, you are working at the very beginning of creation. You are working with God, for God and your own wonderful human imagination are one. Now, many of you may be thinking, this sounds too easy. Surely I must do something in the outer world to achieve my desires. And I say to you, yes, you will do things in the outer world, but these actions will flow naturally from your changed consciousness. They will not be actions taken to achieve your desire. They will be actions taken from the consciousness of already having fulfilled your desire. This is the subtle but crucial difference that most people miss. When your consciousness changed, you will take different actions, not because you are forcing yourself to do so, but because it is natural to your new state of consciousness. The actions themselves do not create the fulfillment of your desire. They express the fulfillment that has already taken place in consciousness. Consider this principle. Everything in your world is yourself pushed out. Every person, every circumstance, every condition is an aspect of your own consciousness made visible. Therefore, when you meet with obstacles or difficulties, do not fight against them, for that is fighting against yourself. Instead, change yourself, your consciousness, and the obstacle either transform or disappear entirely. I recall a gentleman who came to me complaining of a difficult supervisor at work. This supervisor seemed determined to make his life miserable, criticizing everything he did, blocking his advancement, turning others against him. The world would have advised him to confront the supervisor, to complain to higher management, to look for another job. But I advised him to focus on himself, on his consciousness. I said to him, the supervisor you experience is yourself pushed out. Change your concept of him in your consciousness, and he must change in your experience. The man was skeptical but willing to try. Each night before sleep, he would imagine his supervisor congratulating him on his work, treating him with respect and appreciation. He persisted in this assumption, refusing to be swayed by his daytime experiences, which initially continued to be negative. Within 3 weeks, the supervisor's attitude began to change. Without any confrontation or discussion, he became more supportive. He began to praise the very work he had previously criticized. Eventually, he became this man's strongest advocate in the company. The man's colleagues were shocked by the transformation. They could not understand how such a dramatic change had occurred without any outer action. But this man understood. He had focused on himself, on changing his consciousness, and his outer world had reshaped itself accordingly. This is the law, and it never fails. Change yourself and you change your world. Now, let me address a question that often arises. How long must one persist in a new assumption before it manifests in the outer world? The answer is, it varies according to the nature of the desire and the intensity and consistency of your assumption. Some desires manifest almost instantly, others take weeks or months. But this is certain, when the feeling of your wish fulfilled becomes your dominant state, your desire must objectify itself in your world. The Bible says, in patience, possess ye your souls. True patience is not waiting passively for something to happen. True patience is knowing that what you have claimed in consciousness is already yours, and therefore living in the calm assurance that it will appear at the perfect time. This patience, this assurance, this faith is itself a form of focusing on yourself, on your consciousness, rather than on the outer world of shadows. I want to emphasize something that many students miss. This principle works whether you believe in it or not. It is not a matter of faith in the religious sense, but a law as exact as mathematics. Your consciousness is always creating your reality, whether you are conscious of the process or not. Most people create by default, allowing their consciousness to be shaped by outside influences. But you, by understanding this principle, can create deliberately by focusing on yourself, on your consciousness. Consider how most people live. They wake in the morning and immediately focus on the outer world. They read or watch the news, absorbing images of conflict, lack, and limitation. They review their problems, their tasks, their responsibilities. In other words, they focus entirely outside themselves and then wonder why their lives never change. But those who understand the law live differently. They wake in the morning and immediately focus on themselves, on their consciousness. They enter into the feeling of already being who they want to be, already having what they want to have. They feed their minds not on the appearances of the outer world, but on the truth of their inner being. And by so doing, they reshape their experiences in ways that shock everyone around them. I had a student who was deeply in debt. The world would have told her to focus on budgeting, on working extra hours, on negotiating with creditors. But I told her to focus on herself, on her consciousness. I instructed her to fall asleep each night feeling the relief and security of financial abundance. I told her to feel the joy of paying her bills easily, the satisfaction of having more than enough. She created a simple scene in which she was looking at her bank statement showing a substantial balance. She felt the relief, the security, the freedom that such a balance would bring. She persisted in this assumption night after night, refusing to be discouraged by her current financial statements which continued to show lack. Within 2 months, a series of unexpected events occurred. A project she had worked on years before suddenly began generating substantial royalties. A relative she rarely spoke with called to repay a loan she had nearly forgotten. A property she owned that had been considered almost worthless was suddenly desired by a developer who offered her 10 times its assessed value. Within a short time, all her debts were paid, and she had a significant surplus in her bank account. Her friends were shocked. Her financial advisor was shocked. But she understood what had happened. She had focused on herself, on changing her consciousness from one of lack to one of abundance, and her outer world had reshaped itself accordingly. You see, the outer world has no choice but to rearrange itself to match your inner assumptions. This is not magic, it is law. As within, so without is not merely a beautiful saying, but an exact description of how reality operates. Change the within, and the without must change. Now, let me speak to those of you who have tried to apply this law without success. The most common reason for failure is divided attention. You affirm your desire in consciousness, perhaps even feel it briefly, but then return your attention to the facts of your current experience. Remember, attention is the key. Whatever you place your attention on, you claim as your own. If you divide your attention between your desire and your current limitations, you remain suspended between the two. The secret is to give your desire your undivided attention, to focus so completely on the feeling of your wish fulfilled that your current limitations fade from consciousness. This does not mean denying the facts of your present experience when you must deal with them practically. It means not giving those facts any power to shape your consciousness. You recognize them as the shadows of past assumptions, not the substance of your future experience. Another reason for apparent failure is attempting to dictate the how of your desire's fulfillment. Your work is to focus on the what, on the end result, on the feeling of fulfillment. The how, the means by which your desire will be realized, is not your concern. The infinite intelligence that sustains the universe paths that your limited consciousness cannot conceive. When you try to dictate the means, you limit the fulfillment to your own restricted understanding. I recall a woman who desired to visit Paris but had no financial means to do so. The world would have told her to save her money, to plan for years in the future, to compromise on accommodation and experiences. But I told her to focus on herself, on her consciousness. I instructed her to fall asleep each night in the assumption that she was already in Paris. She would imagine looking up at the Eiffel Tower, feeling the cobblestones under her feet, hearing French spoken around her, tasting French cuisine. She persisted in this assumption night after night, feeling the joy and satisfaction of already being in Paris. She made no outward plans, took no physical steps toward her desire. Yet within 3 months, she received a call from a friend who worked for an airline. The friend explained that she had 2 tickets to Paris, all expenses paid, as a bonus from her company. She could take anyone she chose. And she had thought of this woman. Within a month, they were in Paris together and staying at a beautiful hotel, experiencing everything she had imagined. Her family and friends were shocked. They knew her financial situation and could not understand how such an opportunity had come to her. But she understood. She had focused on herself, on changing her consciousness, and her outer world had reshaped itself accordingly. You see, when you focus on yourself in this manner, you align yourself with the creative power of the universe. You move from the position of a beggar, asking for crumbs, to the position of a creator, claiming your divine inheritance. This is what distinguishes those who transform their lives from those who merely wish for transformation. The Bible states, "If ye have faith as a grain of mustard seed, ye shall say unto this mountain, remove hence to yonder place, and it shall remove, and nothing shall be impossible unto you." This is not hyperbole, but a precise statement of law. The faith referred to is not faith in some external power, but faith in yourself, in your consciousness, as the creative power in your world. When you truly understand that your consciousness is God in action, that your human imagination is the divine body, you will no longer beg for your good or struggle to attain it. You will simply focus on yourself, on your consciousness, assuming the feeling of your wish fulfilled, knowing that by this assumption you have set in motion the laws of creation that must bring your desire to pass. Now I want to address another question that often arises. What about the desires of others that may conflict with your own? If consciousness is the only reality, and if we are all shaping our experiences through our assumptions, how do we account for the conflicts that arise in our interactions with others? The answer is simple yet profound. In reality, there is no other. What you experience as other people are aspects of yourself pushed out. Therefore, no one can be in your world as anything other than what you are conscious of them being. This does not mean that other individuals do not have their own consciousness and free will. It means that your experience of them is determined by your consciousness of them. Consider this principle. Everyone in your world is yourself pushed out. Therefore, when you change your consciousness of another, they must change in your experience. They may resist this change temporarily, drawn by the momentum of your past assumptions about them. But if you persist in your new consciousness, they must conform to it or disappear from your world. I recall a man who was in conflict with his business partner. The world would have advised him to confront his partner, to negotiate, perhaps to dissolve the partnership. But I advised him to focus on himself, on his consciousness. I told him, your partner is yourself pushed out. Change your concept of him in your consciousness, and he must change in your experience. Each night before sleep, this man would imagine a harmonious conversation with his partner. He would feel the mutual respect, the cooperation, the shared vision for their business. He persisted in this assumption, refusing to be swayed by their daytime interactions, which initially continued to be conflictual. Within a month, the partner's attitude began to change. Without any confrontation or discussion about their problems, he became more cooperative, more respectful, more aligned with my student's vision for the business. Eventually, they developed a partnership that was mutually beneficial and harmonious. The man's friends and colleagues were shocked by the transformation. They could not understand how such a dramatic change had occurred without any outer effort to resolve the conflict. But this man understood. He had focused on himself, on changing his consciousness, and his outer world had reshaped itself accordingly. This is the law, and it never fails. Change yourself and you change your world. I want to emphasize again that this principle works not just in isolated instances, but consistently in every area of your life. Your health, your wealth, your relationships, your career, all are outpicturings of your states of consciousness. Therefore, to transform any aspect of your life, focus not on the outer conditions, but on yourself, on your consciousness. Consider your body. The world tells you that your body is subject to genetics, to aging, to disease processes beyond your control. But I tell you, your body is an outpicturing of your consciousness. Change your consciousness, and your body must change. This is not to deny the value of proper nutrition, exercise, and medical care. It is to recognize that these outer actions are most effective when they flow from a consciousness of health rather than a consciousness of disease. I recall a woman who had been diagnosed with a chronic condition for which conventional medicine offered no cure. The world told her she must learn to live with her limitations, but she understood the principle of focusing on herself, on her consciousness. Each night before sleep, she would imagine herself engaging in activities that her condition had made impossible. She would feel the joy of movement, the pleasure of pain-free existence, the satisfaction of boundless energy. She persisted in this assumption, refusing to be discouraged by her daily symptoms, which initially continued. Gradually, her condition began to improve. Tests that had previously confirmed her diagnosis began to show normal results. Eventually, her doctors pronounced her completely healed, though they could not explain the mechanism of her recovery. Her friends and family were shocked by her transformation, but she understood. She had focused on herself, on changing her consciousness, and her body had reshaped itself accordingly. You see, when you focus on yourself in this manner, you align yourself with the creative power that sustains the universe. You move from being a victim of circumstances to being a conscious creator of your experience. This shift in consciousness is what truly shocks everyone, for it defies all conventional understanding of cause and effect. The world believes in struggle, in effort, in the slow, incremental improvement of conditions. But those who understand the law know that transformation can be instantaneous in consciousness and rapid in manifestation. When you truly change your consciousness, you collapse time. What might have taken years through conventional means can manifest in days or weeks when you focus on yourself, on your consciousness. I want to share with you a principle that underlies all successful application of this law. The feeling of fulfillment must precede the outer manifestation. You cannot wait to feel successful until after you have achieved success. You must feel successful now in consciousness, and from that state of consciousness will flow the actions and circumstances that result in outer success. This is what the Bible means when it says, before they call, I will answer. The fulfillment exists in consciousness before the outer call, for it is made. This is the true order of creation, first in consciousness, then in manifestation. Now, as we begin to draw our discussion to a close, I want to address one more vital point. The practice of focusing on yourself, on your consciousness, is not something you do occasionally when you desire something specific. It is a way of life. It is the consistent recognition that what you are conscious of being, you must become. Each day, each hour, each moment, you are selecting the states of consciousness that will shape your future experiences. Most people make these selections unconsciously, reacting to outer stimuli, accepting the suggestions of others, falling back on habitual patterns of thought and feeling. But you, by understanding this principle, can make these selections consciously, deliberately focusing on those states that you desire to express in your outer world. This is the art of revision, of consciously reinterpreting the events of your day in a manner that aligns with your desires rather than your fears. At the end of each day, before you sleep, review the events that were less than perfect. Do not simply recall them as they seem to occur. Revise them in your imagination. See them and feel them as you would have preferred them to be. By this practice, you literally rewrite your past and reshape your future. Remember, the past exists only in memory, the future only in imagination. Both are malleable, subject to your consciousness now. By focusing on yourself, on your consciousness, you free yourself from the limitations of past experiences and open yourself to the boundless possibilities that exist in the imagination. In closing, let me remind you of the central truth of our discussion. You are the operant power in your world. Not some distant God, not circumstance, not other people, not your past, but you, through your consciousness, through your imagination. Therefore, focus on yourself, on controlling your states of consciousness, and you will shock everyone with the transformations that occur in your life. For when you truly understand and apply this principle, nothing is impossible to you. As the Bible proclaims, all things are possible to him that believeth. This belief is not mere intellectual assent to a proposition. It is the full acceptance in consciousness of the reality of your desire. It is the feeling of your wish fulfilled, the assumption of the consciousness of already being the person you want to be, already having what you want to have. Focus on yourself, on your consciousness, and shock everyone by demonstrating in your life the truth that consciousness is the only reality, that imagination creates reality, that assumption, though false to fact, if persisted in, will harden into fact. For this is the law and the prophets, the secret that has been hidden from the ages, but is now revealed to those who have eyes to see and ears to hear. Go now in the knowledge of your own divine nature, of your own creative power. Focus on your consciousness and watch in wonder as your world reshapes itself to match your assumptions. For this is the promise, this is the law, this is the fulfillment of all that has been written. As a man thinketh in his heart, so is he. Before we delve into these rules, let us first understand the nature of attachment itself. In the word of Caesar, we are taught from an early age that our happiness, our very sense of self, is dependent on others. We are conditioned to believe that our worth is measured by the affection and approval of those around us. This, my dear friends, is the great illusion that keeps us bound to a life of limitation and suffering. But I say unto you, true freedom lies not in clinging to others, but in recognizing the divinity within yourself. For you are God made manifest, the very essence of creation expressing itself in human form. And in this realization lies the power to detach from all external sources of validation and love. Now, let us turn our attention to the first rule of emotional detachment. Recognize the I am within. This rule, my beloved listeners, is the foundation upon which all else is built. For until you truly understand and embody the I am presence within you, you will forever be at the mercy of external circumstances and relationships. The I am is not some distant, unknowable force. It is the very core of your being, the divine spark that animates your existence. It is the God within, the source of all creation, and the wellspring of infinite possibility. When you say I am, you are invoking the name of God, for did not the scriptures tell us, I am that I am? This is the name by which the divine identified itself to Moses, and it is the name by which you must identify yourself in every moment of your existence. To emotionally detach from someone, you must first attach yourself wholly and completely to the I am within. This is not a rejection of love or connection, but rather a recognition that all love, all connection, all fulfillment comes from within. Imagine, if you will, a beautiful oak tree. Its branches reach towards the heavens. Its leaves dance in the sunlight. But what gives this tree its strength, its very life? Is it not the roots hidden beneath the earth, drawing nourishment from the soil? So too must you be rooted in the I am, drawing your strength and sustenance not from the fleeting affections of others, but from the eternal wellspring of divinity within. Practice this, my dear friends. In every moment of your day, affirm the I am. Say to yourself, I am love. I am peace. I am fulfillment. Feel the power of these words resonating through every cell of your being. For in doing so, you are aligning yourself with the creative force of the universe. As you strengthen your connection to the I am, you will find that your need for emotional validation from others begins to diminish. Like a candle whose flame grows ever brighter, you will become a source of light unto yourself and others. But remember, this is not a practice of isolation or disconnection. Rather, it is the foundation for true, unconditional love. For when you are firmly rooted in the I am, you can extend love to others without expectation or attachment. You become a channel for divine love, allowing it to flow through you freely, unobstructed by fear or need. Now let us move on to the second rule of emotional detachment, live in the end. This rule, my dear listeners, is the very essence of creation. For what you experience in your physical reality is but a shadow, a reflection of what you have already accepted as true in your imagination. To emotionally detach from someone, you must live in the end of complete emotional freedom and self-sufficiency. You must see yourself in your mind's eye as one who is whole, complete and fulfilled, independent of any external relationship or circumstance. Close your eyes for a moment, if you will, and imagine yourself standing tall, radiating confidence and inner peace. See yourself moving through your day with grace and ease, unaffected by the opinions or actions of others. Feel the joy and contentment that comes from knowing that you are the source of your own happiness. This, my friends, is living in the end. It is not a denial of your current circumstances, but rather a recognition of the power of your imagination to shape your reality. For as you persist in this vision of emotional freedom, you will find that your outer world begins to conform to this inner truth. Remember, the world is yourself pushed out. What you hold as true in your imagination must, by the very laws of creation, manifest in your experience. Therefore, if you continue to imagine yourself as emotionally dependent on another, you will continue to experience that dependency in your life. But if you dare to imagine yourself as emotionally free, as one who is complete unto themselves, then that is what you shall become. The person from whom you wish to detach will either fall away naturally from your life, or your relationship with them will transform into one of mutual respect and freedom. Practice this living in the end daily. Before you sleep at night and as you wake in the morning, spend a few moments in quiet contemplation, experiencing the feeling of being emotionally detached and self-sufficient. Feel the relief, the lightness, the joy that comes with this state of being. As you persist in this practice, you will find that your emotional reactions to the person begin to change. Where once there was attachment and need, there will be understanding and compassion. Where once there was fear of loss, there will be an unshakable knowing of your own completeness. Now let us explore the third rule of emotional detachment. Assume the state of the wish fulfilled. This rule, my dear friends, is closely related to living in the end, but it goes a step further. It asks you not only to imagine the end state, but to fully assume it as your current reality. This is the art of what I call thinking from the end rather than thinking of the end. To emotionally detach from someone, you must assume the state of one who is already detached. This is not a matter of pretending or forcing yourself to feel a certain way. Rather, it is about stepping into a new state of consciousness, a new self-concept. Imagine, if you will, that you are an actor on a stage. Up until now, you have been playing the role of someone emotionally attached and dependent. But now you are given a new role, that of someone who is emotionally free and self-sufficient. Your task is to fully embody this new character, to think, feel, and act as they would. How would this emotionally detached version of yourself move through the world? How would they speak? How would they react to situations? How would they feel about themselves and others? Assume these qualities fully, not as something to be achieved in the future, but as your present reality. This assumption of the wish fulfilled is not about denial or suppression of your current feelings. It is about shifting your focus and your energy to a new state of being. It is about choosing moment by moment to align yourself with the version of you that is already emotionally detached. As you assume this state, you may find that your thoughts and feelings towards the person begin to shift naturally. Where once there was a constant preoccupation with their actions and reactions, there is now a calm indifference. Where once there was a need for their approval or affection, there is now a deep sense of self-approval and self-love. Remember, my dear listeners, that your assumption, if persisted in, will harden into fact. Therefore, guard your assumptions carefully. Do not allow yourself to slip back into the old state of attachment. If you find your thoughts drifting towards dependency or need, gently but firmly bring them back to the state of the wish fulfilled. This practice may feel challenging at first, especially if you have been in a state of emotional attachment for a long time. But I assure you, with persistence and faith, it will become more natural. For you are not creating a new reality, but simply aligning yourself with the truth of your being, a being that is whole, complete, and free. As you continue to assume the state of emotional detachment, you will find that your interactions with the person begin to change. You may notice that you no longer react to their words or actions with the same intensity. You may find that you can engage with them from a place of calm neutrality, free from the need to control or change them. This, my friends, is the power of assumption. It is the key to not only emotional detachment, but to all creation. For as you assume, so shall it be done unto you. Now let us turn our attention to the fourth rule of emotional detachment. Release all resistance. This rule, my beloved listeners, may seem paradoxical at first, for in your desire to detach, you may find yourself resisting the very feelings and thoughts you wish to release. But I say unto you, what you resist persists. The key to true detachment lies not in fighting against your attachment, but in releasing all resistance to what is. Consider, if you will, the nature of a river. It flows effortlessly towards the sea, not by pushing against the rocks in its path, but by flowing around them. So too must you learn to flow around the obstacles of attachment rather than struggling against them. Resistance often manifests as judgment of yourself for feeling attached, judgment of the other person for their actions, judgment of the situation itself. But judgment, my dear friends, is the antithesis of detachment. It keeps you bound to the very thing you wish to release. Instead, practice acceptance. Accept your feelings of attachment without condemnation. Accept the other person exactly as they are, without trying to change them. Accept the situation as it is, without wishing it were different. This acceptance is not resignation or passivity. It is not about liking or approving of everything. Rather, it is about acknowledging what is without adding the extra layer of emotional resistance. It is about saying yes to the present moment, even as you work towards creating a different future. As you release resistance, you may find that many of the painful emotions associated with attachment begin to dissolve naturally. For it is not the attachment itself that causes suffering, but your resistance to it. When you cease to fight against what is, you open yourself to the flow of life, allowing transformation to occur effortlessly. Practice this release of resistance in every moment. When you notice yourself tensing up emotionally, whether in thought of the person or in their presence, consciously relax. Let go of the need to control the situation or the other person's behavior. Allow yourself to simply be without judgment or expectation. This practice of non-resistance extends to your thoughts as well. When thoughts of attachment arise, do not try to push them away or replace them with positive thoughts. Instead, observe them with detached awareness. Watch them arise and pass away like clouds in the sky without getting caught up in their story. As you cultivate this attitude of non-resistance, you will find that your emotional energy begins to shift. The intensity of your attachment will begin to dissolve, not through force or willpower, but through the gentle power of acceptance and allowing. Remember, my dear friends, that emotional detachment is not about becoming cold or unfeeling. It is about freeing yourself from the compulsive need for external validation and control. It is about creating space for true love to flourish, love that is given freely without expectation or attachment. Now let us explore the fifth and final rule of emotional detachment: cultivate inner stillness. This rule, my beloved listeners, is the culmination of all that we have discussed, for it is in the depths of inner stillness that true detachment is realized. Not as a concept or a practice, but as your very nature. Inner stillness is not the absence of thought or emotion. It is the presence of awareness, pure, unbounded, and eternally free. It is the discovery of your true self, beyond all attachments and identifications. To cultivate inner stillness, you must learn to step back from the constant chatter of your mind. You must create space between your thoughts, between your breaths, between your heartbeats. In this space lies the key to emotional freedom. Begin by setting aside time each day for quiet contemplation. Find a comfortable place where you will not be disturbed. Close your eyes and turn your attention inward. Focus on your breath, feeling the gentle rise and fall of your chest. As thoughts arise, and they will, for that is the nature of the mind, simply observe them without judgment. Do not try to stop your thoughts or change them. Instead, watch them come and go, like waves on the ocean of your consciousness. As you continue this practice, you may begin to notice moments of profound stillness. Moments when the chatter of your mind subsides and you are left with a deep sense of peace and presence. These moments, however brief, are glimpses of your true nature, the unchanging awareness that underlies all experience. From this place of inner stillness, emotional detachment arises naturally. For in the depths of your being, you recognize that you are not your thoughts, not your emotions, not your attachments. You are the awareness in which all these arise and pass away. As you cultivate this inner stillness, you will find that your emotional reactions begin to lose their grip. The person from whom you wish to detach no longer has the power to disturb your peace. Their words and actions may still create ripples on the surface of your mind, but they cannot touch the depths of your being. This inner stillness becomes your refuge, a place of peace and clarity to which you can return at any moment. When you feel yourself becoming entangled in attachment or emotional reactivity, simply take a deep breath and reconnect with this still center within you. From this place of stillness, you can engage with the world and with the person from whom you're detaching with grace and equanimity. You can love without attachment, care without dependency, and relate without losing yourself. Remember, my dear friends, that this inner stillness is not something you need to create or achieve. It is already present within you, waiting to be recognized. Your task is simply to remove the obstacles, the mental and emotional noise that obscure its presence. As you practice these 5 rules, recognizing the I am within, living in the end, assuming the state of the wish fulfilled, releasing all resistance, and cultivating inner stillness, you will find that emotional detachment becomes not just a goal to be achieved, but a natural expression of your true self. Now, my beloved listeners, I want you to understand that this journey of emotional detachment is not a linear process. It is not something that happens overnight or in a steady, predictable progression. Rather, it is a dance, a beautiful, sometimes challenging dance between your habitual patterns of attachment and your growing awareness of your true, detached nature. There will be moments of profound clarity and freedom, where you feel completely detached and at peace. Cherish these moments, for they are glimpses of your true potential. But do not become attached to them, for attachment to detachment is still attachment. There will also be moments when you feel as though you've slipped back into old patterns of emotional dependency. Do not judge yourself for these moments. They are not failures, but opportunities for deeper understanding and growth. Each time you notice yourself becoming entangled in attachment, it is an invitation to practice these principles anew. Remember, emotional detachment is not about suppressing your feelings or becoming indifferent to others. It is about freeing yourself from the compulsive need for external validation and control. It is about creating space for true love to flourish, love that is given freely without expectation or attachment. As you continue on this journey, you may find that your relationship with the person from whom you're detaching begins to transform. Without the weight of your emotional expectations and needs, they may feel freer to be themselves. You may discover a new kind of relationship emerging, one based on mutual respect and genuine care rather than dependency and fear. Or you may find that as you detach emotionally, the relationship naturally falls away. For relationships built solely on attachment and need cannot survive in the light of true emotional freedom. Trust in this process, for it is the natural unfolding of your alignment with your true self. Throughout this journey, be gentle with yourself. Emotional detachment is not about forcing yourself to feel or not feel certain things. It is about allowing yourself to be exactly as you are in each moment, while holding the vision of your emotionally free self. Practice self-compassion as you navigate this path. When you notice yourself slipping into old patterns of attachment, rather than berating yourself, offer yourself the same kindness and understanding you would offer a dear friend. Speak to yourself with words of encouragement and love. Remember also to celebrate your progress, no matter how small it may seem. Each moment of awareness, each choice to align with your detached self is a victory. Acknowledge these moments, for they are the building blocks of your transformation. As you move through your days practicing these 5 rules of emotional detachment, you may begin to notice changes not just in your relationship with the specific person you're detaching from, but in all your relationships and interactions. You may find yourself becoming less reactive in general, less easily swayed by the opinions and actions of others. You may discover a new sense of inner peace and stability that remains constant regardless of external circumstances. This, my dear friends, is the true gift of emotional detachment. It is not just about freeing yourself from one specific attachment, but about realizing your inherent freedom in all situations. As you continue to practice, you may find that the very concept of detachment begins to shift. What once seemed like a goal to be achieved becomes simply your natural state of being. You realize that you were never truly attached in the first place, that attachment was merely a story you were telling yourself. In this realization lies true freedom. For when you know yourself as the unchanging awareness beneath all thoughts and emotions, what is there to attach to or detach from? You are already complete, already whole, already free. From this place of inner freedom, you can engage fully with life without becoming entangled. You can love deeply without losing yourself. You can care profoundly without being controlled by your caring. This, my beloved listeners, is the promise of emotional detachment. It is not a dry intellectual concept, but a living reality that you can embody in every moment of your existence. As we near the end of our exploration, I want to remind you that the power to emotionally detach lies entirely within you. It is not dependent on the actions or reactions of others. It does not require the cooperation or understanding of the person from whom you're detaching. It is a choice that you make moment by moment to align with your true free nature. In every interaction, in every thought of the person, you have the opportunity to practice these principles. Each moment is a new beginning, a fresh chance to choose detachment over attachment, freedom over dependency. Remember, the world around you is a reflection of your inner state. As you cultivate emotional detachment within yourself, you will find that your outer world begins to mirror this inner freedom. Relationships that were once sources of pain and struggle may transform into sources of joy and mutual growth, or they may fall away entirely, making space for new, more aligned connections to enter your life. Trust in this process, my dear friends. Trust in the wisdom of your own being. For as you align yourself with the truth of who you are, a divine, infinite being, complete unto yourself, all things must rearrange themselves to match this inner knowing. And so as we come to the close of this discourse, I invite you to take a moment to reflect on what you've heard. Feel the truth of these words resonating within you. Know that the power to emotionally detach, to free yourself from all limiting attachments, is already within you, waiting to be recognized and expressed. Go forth from this place with a renewed commitment to your emotional freedom. Practice these 5 rules diligently. Recognize the I am within. Live in the end. Assume the state of the wish fulfilled. Release all resistance and cultivate inner stillness. But above all, remember that you are already that which you seek to become. You are already detached, already free, already complete. Your task is simply to remove the veils of illusion that obscure this truth. In every moment, you have a choice. You can choose to identify with your attachments and dependencies, or you can choose to align with your true, free nature. Make this choice consciously, make it with love, and make it again and again until it becomes your natural state of being. And know, my beloved friends, that as you walk this path of emotional detachment, you are not alone. The entire universe conspires to support you in your journey towards freedom. For in freeing yourself, you contribute to the freedom of all beings. May you go forth in peace, in love, and in the unshakable knowing of your own divine completeness. May you find the strength to detach from all that no longer serves you, and the courage to embrace the fullness of your true, liberated self. Remember, you are the creator of your reality. You are the author of your story. Write a story of freedom, of joy, of unconditional love. For that is your birthright, and it is within your power to claim it. Go now and be the embodiment of emotional freedom. Be the living proof that true love needs no attachment, that true strength comes from within, that true peace is your very nature. And as you do, know that you are fulfilling your highest purpose, for in freeing yourself, you light the way for others. In detaching from your own limitations, you help to liberate the world. This, my dear friends, is the ultimate gift of emotional detachment. It is not just a personal practice, but a service to all of humanity. For as you free yourself, you create a ripple effect that touches all those around you, inviting them to recognize their own inherent freedom. So go forth with courage, with faith, and with the unwavering conviction that emotional detachment is not just possible, but inevitable. For it is the truth of your being, waiting to be realized. May you be blessed on your journey. May you find the strength to persist in these practices. And may you come to know, beyond all doubt, the joy and peace that comes from true emotional freedom.